Chairman Mulvaney and Ranking Member Schrader and members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss crowdfunding and how it can function as a part of the solution for the small business funding crisis in the United States. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of this committee and the House at large for their bipartisan and overwhelming support for the crowdfunding as part of the JOBS Act that the President signed on April 5th. It was a great testament to the willingness of both parties to work together in support of small business and entrepreneurs, which we all know are America's economic engine. When entrepreneurs have access to capital to grow their organizations, it translates into new American jobs and American innovation. My name is Jason Best, and I'm an entrepreneur who's been part of the executive management team also of Kinzer Software that was ranked as one of the 500 fastest growing private companies in the United States both in 2010 and 2011. I'm also co-founder of Startup Exemption. Startup Exemption was formed to advocate for the legalization of equity-based crowdfunding. I and my co-founders Sherwood Neese and Zach Cassidy-Dorian saw firsthand the realities of capital formation crisis in January of 2011. We created a proposal to update securities laws that were written almost 80 years ago to enable crowdfunding to take place in the U.S. We began working with the House on our ideas, and thanks to the collaborative leadership of the House, the Senate, and the President, crowdfunding has now become law. Now the SEC has begun its 270-day rulemaking process, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspectives on what this means for small business, as well as what I would respectfully suggest that this committee and the House consider between now and the conclusion of the rulemaking period. Crowdfunding will enable organizations to use SEC-regulated websites to raise modest amounts of capital from large numbers of regular Americans. In exchange for that capital, these small businesses will issue equity or debt securities. If we think of the Internet as Web 1.0, and then the rise of social networks like Facebook and Twitter as Web 2.0, this legislation really creates Web 3.0. Web 3.0 is where the social web meets capital formation. Finally, we're able to harness the power of social networks, communities, as well as communities of geography and communities of interest to build businesses that create jobs and innovation. I live in San Francisco, California, where venture capital and angel investors are plentiful. The same can be said of places like Austin, Texas, and New York City. How will this crowdfunding benefit companies in these places really is looking at providing them with another option for some early-stage businesses who need to establish proof points with professional investors that the management team can execute, and there are markets for its goods and services. Mr. Chairman, I believe that companies may use crowdfunding as an on-ramp to professional capital and investment from angels and VCs. But what about places like Natchitoches, Louisiana, where I grew up, or Arnold, Nebraska, where my family first settled in this country? There are great ideas, talented entrepreneurs, and hardworking small business people in towns like these all across the country, and many of these individuals have no access to venture capital or even bank loans. Many Main Street businesses may never fit the typical venture-backed business model, but may be really good investments for individuals in those communities. Now crowdfunding can provide these businesses and entrepreneurs the chance to raise capital from their own communities. Soon a dry cleaner could crowdfund to add much-needed equipment, or a restaurant could open a second location. While crowdfunding alone cannot solve all capital formation challenges, it may provide benefits to many businesses. But, Mr. Chairman, there is still a great deal of work to do in the 256 days remaining in this rulemaking process. As the President noted during his signing ceremony, the crowdfunding industry has formed the Crowdfunding Leadership Group. I was just meeting with this group yesterday, in fact. This group's goal is to collaborate with the SEC during the rulemaking period as it seeks to provide oversight, education, and investor protection for the industry. These 14 crowdfunding companies and industry experts that created this group have already begun their work. And as a board member of this group, I ask for this committee's help in ensuring the SEC can complete its work within the 270 days mandated by the legislation of the JOBS Act. The crowdfunding industry has committed to do all it can to create an orderly market with investor protection, investor education, transparency, and data flows that can demonstrate that the market can create jobs, innovation, and successful companies. Please help us as we collaborate with the SEC to create rules that will enable this industry to thrive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this committee, and I look forward to your questions.